Corbyn, do you wash your ice?
Do I wash my ice?
Yeah.
No, I don't wash my ice.
So, what's your ice situation at home? How do you? Is it a?
We have my ice maker in the fridge broke.
Okay.
And it was $600 to replace.
Wow.
That I already replaced once, and then it broke again.
Oh.
And so I've said I'm not doing it, and so I bought an ice machine.
Okay.
For $100, and so we put the tap water in, and then it makes the ice, and we put it in the tray of the original ice maker.
I see. So when you're taking the ice out and putting it in your drink, are you just free put it in the cup, or do you wash the ice off first?
I just put it in the cup.
So you don't clean your ice.
I don't clean my ice.
Okay.
You're worrying me right now.
Well, I clean my ice, but I think some people are different. Would you rather spend another $600 for a new ice box or watch The Big Bang Theory?
Why the fuck am I washing ice?
Welcome to Radical Apathy, the podcast where two half-wits set out to solve all the world's problems with pop culture references and a lackadaisical attitude. Why not? It's worked so far.
Hello and welcome to Radical Apathy. My name is Tanner.
And I'm Corbyn.
Hi, Corbyn.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I had a long day.
Yeah, you do have long days. Although you have less and less.
I did something today.
Okay.
Okay, and so okay, let's just call it work. I did some work today.
Sure, work.
And
work was done.
I got there, and I was so exhausted. I took my break at 9 in the morning, just so I could sleep for an hour.
Okay.
And when you do that, the rest of the day is a slog. It goes so slow.
Yeah.
So it's the longest day possible.
The early drop is tough.
It was awful.
But you know what? You look refreshed. No, you don't. That should be being nice. You look normal.
I look like I sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Hey, speaking of sound,
Go.
we have a guest with us today.
I'm very excited.
Me too. Hello, guest.
Hello.
Hi, guest. Guest, you want to tell everyone your name?
My name's Mike Reeder.
I'm Mike Reeder.
Mike Reeder.
Are you the same Michael S. Reeder who is a published author?
Yes, I am.
That is exciting. Hi, Mike Reeder. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mike. We are excited. You're the first literary individual we've had.
Yeah.
Like we've had actors. We've had
Kind of doctors.
Well, a doctor.
We've had car dealerships. We had general restaurateurs.
A part of cabals, like restaurateur cabals.
We've had a radio DJ.
Yeah, but so basically our point is we've had a lot of stupid people.
They were all
so I'll fit right in.
They
there.
were all horrible guests.
So you're our first. This is our first intellectual.
Is that right?
legit.
Sit down. Yeah. So you're gonna carry us.
Buddy. Yeah,
you're gonna raise the IQ in this room as we
Sure
go.
am.
So we're very excited to have you.
I feel smarter already.
We have a ton of questions we're going to get into with you, and thank you for being here. Feel free to jump in whenever you like. But before that,
Okay.
we have homework we got to follow up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what was the homework? Remind me.
The homework, last episode was a rundown of Corbyn's Las Vegas trip. And Mike, I don't know if you know this, but Corbyn is we came up with a word for it and I forget it already. A Vegasonian? A Vagonian?
Veganite? Vegan? No, a vegan.
A vegan.
Yeah, it's a
He's
vegan.
He's a
Not
vegan.
a vegan. A vegan. Speaking of which, what do
Yeah.
vegans, like after going on a huge bender,
Yeah.
what do you think vegans crave for food?
So they're out getting lit.
Yeah, like they go and
Okay.
they get wrecked. What do you think that the food, like what is the after food?
I
that
assume
they go? Like,
I assume
what is it,
because they
mushrooms?
won't eat animals, they just breathe deeply into like the neck fur of a rabbit. Because they can't eat it.
Slowly.
Can't eat it.
Yeah.
They just, I don't know. I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, I was actually in Vegas and I had some drinks. And I'm like, man, I wonder what vegans do right now when I'm about to
Yeah,
eat
they just
pizza.
they just hold
If
it.
you were wondering that, you had more than just a couple drinks.
It was a healthy amount. I like I told him, I never get completely.
business.
I don't. It's
It's
business down there.
business time when he
I
goes.
don't.
is that
I don't
right?
get out of control down there when I go down there. I have
Business.
leisurely drinks and that's it.
Business time.
Yep.
His homework was one of the questions I asked him was what kind of one-man show he would have in Vegas. Because as I'm sure you're aware, him and I are both part-time actors, very successful. And if he had his own part-time show down there, kind of a.
How would I open it? Right?
Yeah. So what would your opening be?
Got
So
it.
okay.
So we said it would be like a comedy conversational show.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what I do.
Okay, but hold on. We got to set. You got to set the scene.
Okay.
Okay. So
Clothed?
Optional. It depends what the day is.
For the
Tuesdays,
audience
no.
or
Oh,
for
no,
you?
the audience has got to have clothes on.
Okay.
I'm talking.
So we sit down in a large auditorium, Mike. The lights go dim.
Yeah.
Okay. And then some, the smoke, and then we hear.
No smoke. No smoke. And I don't think I'd have that music either.
Well,
But
that's all I have.
I'll tell you what I'll have, though.
Okay.
Okay, so there'll be lights. It'll be shining. Okay. And then there'll be one of those white screens. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
My microphone's acting up here.
Yeah.
It'll be one of those white screens, and then I'd be behind the white screen, and then a light would be shining behind me, projecting
the figure.
the figure
shadow
onto
figure.
the thing,
Okay,
which
yep.
would eventually come up. And I thought the music playing would be "Bad Boy for Life" by P. Diddy.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh no! I'm going to change that.
Yeah.
Denise Williams.
Oh.
Let's hear it for the boys.
Here for the boy. It's a shout out to my generation. Thank you.
Our generation.
Can you give me a quick vocab on that song, Mike?
Yes, I can, but
Okay.
I won't.
Oh, okay.
My baby don't want.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ain't
Okay.
got
Yeah.
much to say.
Oh.
You have come on. That song's great.
No, I know. I'm just looking.
Last movie I ever went to before I went on my mission
Was that movie?
was that movie.
Oh.
With the girl that eventually dumped me.
Drive-In?
We'll get
What
into
movie?
it.
What movie is that from?
You kidding?
No, what movie is that from? I don't know. I'm serious.
Kevin Bacon. Filmed in Utah.
Was it Footloose?
Footloose.
Oh, really? I didn't. Oh, yeah.
Was that song in Footloose?
That song was in the soundtrack of Footloose.
No dancing.
That guy was so angry about dancing. John Lithgow was.
John Lithgow
was
is
so
what?
serious.
Such an underrated actor.
Yeah, he was the best.
John Lithgow. He's such an underrated actor.
He's not in anything anymore, though.
Well, he did
It's like
Dexter, right?
90 or something, though.
Yeah, I'd still watch 90-year-old John Lithgow.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
See, we get sidetracked quite a bit, Mike.
Squirrel.
So
That's what I do to open the show.
Okay, so that lifts up.
Yeah,
And
let's
what?
hear it for the boy, Denise Williams.
And then what are you behind it?
What do you mean?
Like, what are you? Are you? What are you wearing? Was it just you?
Well, yeah, can I go velvet leisure suit? Can I? Say
I mean,
that?
it's your show. You can do whatever you
I
want.
can do whatever. Kind of like Eddie
a
Murphy.
onesie, like a onesie though, right? Like
Yeah, kind of like Eddie
velvet
Murphy's
onesie.
Eddie Murphy Raw or Delirious, but except velvet
Okay. Yeah.
because it's in Vegas. You
Sure.
don't have velvet in Vegas.
Okay. And are you just going cold open? Hey, audience work? Or are you doing? Is there a
You
joke you
always
fall
start with
to?
audience work.
Straight to audience work.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So if you see Mike and I sitting together in the audience,
yeah.
what would you do?
What the fuck?
tell us to stop holding hands.
Yeah, stop it.
So sorry.
I tell you to stop it is what I tell you to do.
Hey, this is my show. Stop it.
Listen, yes, I don't know. There's that. I don't know.
It sounds fun. I like the showmanship out of the gate.
Yeah.
Like you're just straight into showmanship.
Yeah, I'm glad I changed to Denise Williams though.
Yeah. That
Although P Diddy would be good.
You're gonna-
Actually, at the end,
you walk
then
out.
I'll walk out. Bad
out
boy
to
for
P.
life.
Diddy. Isn't it Puffy now? He changed it again.
No,
Didn't
I
he?
think it's just P Diddy. Or
Okay.
just Diddy.
It's just Diddy. Yeah.
You know what?
Kit.
You know what? Going back to our last conversation last time.
Yeah.
I don't care, and I don't want to remember your shit.
Yeah. You get one name. Rappers. You don't get to have five.
We were talking about how kids use all these abbreviations
Right.
now, and I don't want to remember all of them, so I refuse to do it. It's apathy, radical apathy. Plug.
Hey.
There's a plug. TM.
Nice.
That's the name of our show.
Trademark.
That's nice.
See what we do there? Okay,
good
good,
segue.
good homework.
Yep.
Well done. Before we get into the top five, I wanted to do a brand new segment.
Okay.
Something brand new today.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to colloquially refer to this as "What Are You Playing?"
Oh, okay.
So,
Let's do that. Okay.
we this is a fortnightly podcast, Michael. As I'm sure you know, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I'm sure you've listened to
You listen to all
everyone,
of them.
and you're a diehard fan,
You're a
correct?
big fan of the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, right. So you know this. So
Yeah.
we're a fortnightly podcast, and during that time, both Corbyn and I play vids, as the kids say.
We don't say that though.
So we play electronic video games. What are you playing?
You want to know what I'm doing right now?
Yeah.
I went all the way back to 2010, and I'm replaying. all the way back, and I'm replaying God of War 3 remastered version.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had a save file, and I had all the collectibles, and now I'm like New Game Plus, going back and crushing the whole thing
But with all the old stuff you'd won.
all the stuff I've won, and
Nice.
just wrecking face. Like there's no way I'm dying type thing.
Is the third one? Is that the one with Gaia?
Well,
the
Gaia
giant
comes
Earth.
in part 2,
Second
and then
one.
the game ends with her climbing up Mount Olympus, saying, "We're going to go get him."
Yeah, we're gonna-
And
then
then
we're- oh,
in this
okay,
one,
right. Yes.
he basically goes and then he kills Gaia eventually.
Are you familiar with the God of War series, Mike?
No.
It's all based on Greek mythology,
Right.
Yeah.
And so he gets it's a guy named Kratos, and the God of War Ares tricks him or kills his wife,
Kills the
and
wife
daughter.
and daughter.
And so he goes on a revenge tour of killing gods. And every time he kills a god, he gains their power.
Oh.
It's sick.
And he
the
lights them
visuals
up.
are sick. The story's awesome. It's
Have you played the remakes, the
I
2020s?
own them, and I haven't played
You
them.
haven't played them?
No, not yet.
So the original trilogy, yeah,
I don't like
in
Norse
the early
myth-
10s.
The reason why is I don't like Norse mythology as much as I like Greek mythology.
Okay, we're gonna have to get into a mythology. Maybe this should have been the mythology because I think Mike would have more of a knowledge base than other people. But the first 3 were more like very action, hack and slashy, kind of run around, very stylish.
The word you're looking for is enjoyable.
It's awesome. They're great games. And then these remakes they've done in the last 5 years, there's still an action hack and slash game, but very narratively intense.
Well, they all are, though. They all are.
Yeah, but play these new ones because they're very much, I guess.
So they got away from hack and slash, even though it's Norse gods.
It was he basically retired from killing all the Greek gods, but he retired.
Well, there's more to.
Yeah, so then he retired to the Norse gods, and then he gets tied up in the Norse gods. Like, all right, well, I guess I'll fucking kill all you guys
I
too.
guess I'm killing all you guys.
Which is what he does.
That's fair.
Yeah,
It's a really good series.
yeah, great series of games.
What are you playing?
I am playing Helldivers 2.
My son will not shut up.
You know what?
About Helldivers 2.
So Helldivers 2.
I don't even want to hear this.
Well,
because
hey.
all I've heard is this shit from my son for the last week.
Well, get him down here because we're gonna have to
Oh,
have this
God.
discussion. So
Next guest.
hell yeah.
You probably do better than me.
Mike, what are you playing?
I don't anymore.
What was the last video game you played?
Dude.
Go back and go back
Probably-
as far as you can.
Probably. It's got to be a first-person shooter.
Yeah,
Counter-Strike, probably.
probably called
Remember-
PC Counter Strike.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember when
yeah.
we used to play those flight simulators?
Yeah, I used to
back
do
in
that
the
all the
day?
time. And that was years and years ago.
Years
yeah.
and years ago, and you had a really kick-ass joystick that you brought to work the one time.
And I basically gave all that stuff up. I stopped playing probably around then.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
Aw, muffin.
Yeah, Helldivers 2. It's
No,
great.
It had because my kid was getting old enough that
We're not going to talk about Helldivers.
We'll come back to you.
It's
It's about the
like we're
guest.
just
It's about the
skipping over
guest.
Helldivers too.
It's about the
my
guest.
kid was getting old
Okay.
enough that I didn't want to be playing games with, he's my age kind of thing.
Yeah.
So then he started getting on the internet and playing with people that I worked with and trash talking them.
I like it.
And does he now play games?
Oh, still all
Yeah,
the time.
of course. Yeah.
He's actually living with a girl who's part Japanese.
Yeah.
So they're into the anime side of stuff. He's into everything, man. He loves playing
Living his
games.
best life.
Yeah, he is.
Living his best life, man.
27 or 28 or something like that, and still
awesome.
just
Cool.
going crazy on it.
All right, Helldivers 2. Go ahead.
Here's
What is it about? 'Cause
Okay,
I've
here's-
actually ignored my son for a week. So tell me what the game is actually about.
Okay. It's a perfect example of right game, right time. So the game industry as it is right now is in a shitty situation where there are mass layoffs, just business people coming into the game industry because it makes a lot of money.
Stupid business people.
Business people being businessy, and then they have tumultuous push-offs. Like there was a game just came out. It's called Skull and Bones, and it was basically what was going to be an expansion to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, which came out in 2011, 2012. So then this game started development in 2013, and it was going to be like a pirate boat game.
I thought this was like Starship Troopers.
We'll get there.
Okay.
So that game,
Favorite book,
that
I didn't even know that was a book.
Oh yeah.
Robert Heinlein from the 60s or 50s.
Really?
Yeah.
Unbelievably good.
We're going to talk about another sci-fi
Yeah,
book
we're gonna
when
get
we
it.
get to
Don't
your
worry.
next book. We're going to do that for sure.
So the
Excited about that.
over 10 years of development to this game, the publishing company says this is a quadruple A game. This is the full $70 you got to pay, the best game ever. It comes out and like 800 people are playing it. Garbage. Helldivers 2 is a B tier company, small studio that just focused on making a good game and put it out. and within 24 hours, they had 400,000 people playing it.
It's amazing how good always trumps over.
Yes, gameplay
Glitz.
is king.
Yeah.
Always. And it's just fun. So it is the most the most Starship Troopers video game experience there is. It is hyper sensualized like the patriotic on like Starship Troopers. It's just
Tell me you're not going on it the way Verhagen did the movie.
No. Well,
it's actually got a little cheese to it.
Yeah, it's more like the movie than the book, because it is very cheesy. Like it's very, they call it managed democracy.
Yeah,
is the joke of it, and they're being attacked in the universe either by bugs, or robots. So you can kind of choose where you want to go to. And then you just play with 4 people. You're hell divers, so you're in a spaceship and you get shot out of a pod going 1,000 miles an hour down into the earth. You pick your mission, you get out, you run around with your little gun, and you go shoot bugs. And you do an objective, you get back on the bird, and you go back to this. And if you die, they got to call in reinforcements. It's just the gameplay is good, and there's no pay to win. There's none of that bullshit that's in games nowadays.
That's how my son sold it to me.
Yeah, there's none of it. It's just fun game to play, and it's a fun multiplayer, and it was so successful. Like when this company made it, Arrowhead Studios, they're owned by Sony, but they're their own little production house. They had assumed maybe they'd have 80,000 people playing, kind of around the top. So they have their servers because it's online, and then within 24 hours they had 400,000. So they couldn't even handle the success, right? They couldn't make enough game space for people. So you're willing to give them the break for that, but I'm really happy to see them be successful. It's a lot of fun.
How do you feel about playing with a 12-year-old?
I've done it for many years.
Because I'm half joking, but I'm half serious. Because if he played with you, at least I know who he's playing with. Does that make sense? Like with online games.
My 13-year-old, when he was 13, was playing.
Yeah, let me put it this way. When your son started playing video games, I would play like some old Call of Duty with him.
Yeah.
And he would destroy me. But you know, there's assholes everywhere, but I've played online video games since like 1997 when they started being online video games, and I've never once been asked for a picture of my penis.
You know why?
Or asked to be touched.
Well, I can explain that.
Okay, go ahead. Tell me why no one wants to see my penis.
Have you heard yourself? You sound like a very small penis person.
You know what, I have.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
Well,
average
in the video game space.
In the video game space, yeah. What is a well endowed person sound like on video games?
Sounds like me, obviously.
No, I think you and I sound quite a bit alike.
Clearly, he sounds like me.
Clearly, he sounds like me.
Clearly, he sounds like me.
Is that
You're
clear?
both retards.
Okay. That's what we're playing.
I think you should just whip them out, and I'll tell the audience whose is bigger.
We'll say that for our After Dark podcast.
Maybe that can be your homework.
Measure.
There you go. Measurement. You don't have to compare right next to each other.
Yeah, but how else are you going to do it?
Get somebody that the other person trusts.
Third party.
Tip to tip and see who's farther
We each go
away.
in a closet with Mike for 12 minutes.
No.
and then that'll be the judge.
Mike wants nothing to do with this. It's just a suggestion, and I walk away.
Your suggestion, your show. So that's what we're playing. Well, touch base. I like those discussions.
Helldivers 2?
Helldivers 2.
Okay.
On PC, on PlayStation 5. Strongly suggest to get it if you like video games. It's a lot of fun.
There's a question we ask every one of our guests that we remember to do when we remember.
After the top 5.
After the top 5, we'll do that. I forgot about that.
I know, we got a top 5.
Top 5.
And now we're going to do our, which, Mike, again, I'm sure you know this. Now we're going to do our...
Everyone loves lists.
And we're going to get into our top 5 list.
Oh, we're going to put a little sound here. Oh, wow. That's so...
I don't think you're supposed to talk over the sound.
Well, I think
the sound...
I think if you picture me with the suit, the velvet suit
I think
on,
the sound happens.
that's what I would look
like. That's hip tunage, though, boys.
So just with your shoulders...
I said that dripping 70s on purpose.
With your shoulders, walk me through how you would walk out to that song go.
You're just going to...
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of backwards.
Yeah. The neck movement.
Side to side. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Like an ostrich would
That's
walk,
fine.
but cooler.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sure the listening audience would love to see too.
Well, unfortunately, that was just for you.
Okay.
Tanner's top 5.
What is it this week?
This week, Tanner's top 5. Tanner's top 5 novels / novel series.
Oh. Wow. Okay.
I bet you can't guess why I chose this.
Because we have an author on the show.
We have an author on the show. Hi, Mike.
Which genre did you go with?
Well, these are my top 5 of everything.
Of everything.
All of
How do you do
them.
that? How do you do that?
This actually, when I sat down, I was like, oh, I'll bang this out really fast. This took me a while. to figure out what it was.
And you'll be wrong.
Well, no, this is my top 5.
Okay,
but you know what? I want.
Okay.
I want yours. I'm starting to learn Corbyn's piece on this. But do you read books, Corbyn?
I do.
Okay. Just want to make
He's
sure.
going to read mine.
So number
I'm
5
going to read this. Yes, absolutely.
for Tanner's top 5 is the Ryan Drake series by Will Jordan.
Ryan Drake.
Yeah. So this is. I mean, it's.
What genre?
Not to say it's bad, but it's more. This is your Jason Bourne meets Jack Reacher type of book. Okay. So Ryan Drake is he was once a British Army soldier. He now works for the CIA, and he leads an investigative team that tracks down missing agents. Okay. So that's kind of it. So he's kind of along Jason Bourne, but more of that investigative military side. By an author, Will Jordan, out in the UK. It's just, you know what? It's a lot of fun.
This is basically Jack Reacher mixed with Jason Bourne.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the best way I could put it. But
I did it. What are you talking about? What
fun books.
You could put it. I'm the one who said it.
Well, yeah, that's the best way I would put it.
You would put it how I said it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're taking the words out of my mouth.
I did.
Meatloaf style.
Oh, yeah.
What's his name? The author's name?
Meatloaf?
You two idiots. The author's name.
Will Jordan.
There we go. Okay.
The Ryan Drake series by Will Jordan. I think there's 4 of them. Book 1 is called Redemption. Yeah, you know what? Some people will qualify it as like an airport lobby book. Okay, but you know, they're fun. I like the way he writes. They're compelling stories. They're all little kind of the one-offs that pop out. Okay. I like it. That's my number 5.
Number 5. All right.
Number 4 is I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison.
Is this a self-help book?
No. This is the scariest book
brilliant.
I've ever read.
It's brilliant.
Scariest book I've ever read. It's sci-fi. It's post-apocalyptic sci-fi. I thought it'd kind of be up your alley there, Mike.
It's brilliant.
It is one of the. It is the scariest book I've ever read, and it's not a big book. Like I don't know if it qualifies as a short story.
It's kind of in between. It's like maybe 140 pages.
It's not much, yeah, but it's scary. Like it is like to read it.
Okay, so what scares Tanner then?
Well, everything. But this one is. It was written back in. Oh, it was written in 1967. I wrote it down because I'm a good prepper. Cold War progressed into World War III between the U.S., Soviet Union, and China. Yeah. They all decided to build these supercomputers called Allied Master Computers. And each one built their own. And basically it was to coordinate the armed forces and the troops and the conflict and all that during World War III. But one of these computers becomes sentient.
Judgment Day.
And takes over and it says, you know what? Humans fuck humans, and annihilates everybody. And then the book takes place like 100 or so years after that. And there's only 5 human beings left alive. And it's the AI keeping these 5 people alive. And then what the AI does to these 5 people as a means of
almost entertainment.
Yeah, and to subjugate these human beings because it's alive, it's an emotional AI. And just how it goes through and then how after events now humans try to defeat it or don't. Like this
is like where every major action franchise has been derived from.
Yeah, except this is it's a horrifying read. Like it's okay. It's dark. Like but if you're in that mood and you read that book, it is
all right. I'll read it.
Delightful horror. If you ever get a chance, I'm surprised it hasn't been a movie. I mean, there's movies like it, but it's good. Okay, number 3 for Tanner's top 5 is All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Remarque. Just a classic. This one, I think everyone had to read in high school, no?
No, I never had to read it.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, look at you guys.
Every generation's different. I had Lord of the Flies.
Yeah,
I read Lord of the Flies.
Okay, so All Quiet on the Western Front. I mean, this was older than that, but
there's no way they would make you read Lord of the Flies nowadays.
No,
you don't think? No, probably not.
Kids killing kids.
Yeah.
They'd be like,
eat them.
Yeah,
Piggy has the conch.
One of the guys on one of my patrol teams once gained a little bit of weight.
Yeah,
and he was trying to say something. Another guy said, "You guys shut up. Piggy's got the conch."
And 70% of them didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty much the case.
This was World War One German soldier wrote this book.
Okay.
Fiction
Yep.
of a young soldier doing trench warfare in World War One. They just made it a movie on Netflix.
That's a remake of the first one
of
in
the
the
first movie.
1930s. Yeah.
This book. This was when I read this book. I read it in high school, and it was one of the first books. While still fiction, it's very based upon obviously real world events. It was one of the ones that really made war real for me.
It was touted as being the first anti-war movie ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it concentrates, the first part of the movie concentrates on these young, it's an all boys school, and there's a German school, and their professor is talking to them about how proud they should be to die for their country, and it's just, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And then they go to the trenches of World War One and see what it's really like. It's amazing. It's amazing.
And you see the death that comes with it. It's very visceral and gets into it, but it really hammers home war. So, it's definitely an anti-war book, like absolutely. Yeah. But
that whole generation grew up after. I mean, half of the young men in France died in that war, right? And so they couldn't help but be anti-war. After that,
and it was written by a World War One German soldier.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Good book. That was number 3. Number two is the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie. Mike's pointing at me.
I am so out of the loop. You guys have read all these?
I read that because you told me to.
I did. Oh,
yeah, I got it on my Kobo. It's so good.
It's what it's fantasy.
Yeah,
it's a fantasy book. It's very grounded fantasy. So that's fair to say, Mike.
Yeah.
But it starts as a trilogy. There's been a couple expanded stories since then by Joe Abercrombie. But yeah, it's I guess really quick. The plot of the original 3 involves these 3 major powers: the Union, which is kind of like your Holy Roman Empire.
Okay.
There's the Gurkish Empire, which is kind of like your Turkeys and your Ottomans going there, and then there's the North, which is your tribal Germanic type groups. Is the best way to equate them. And there's a couple main theaters of war that take place between the North and the Union and the Gurkish Empire. And the majority of the war happened before the trilogy, so kind of in this weird peace, not quite peace, Cold War time, where it picks off, and it follows the stories of, I think, 6 main characters kind of dotted throughout, and how they come together and interact with each other and follow it. And then there is a actual fantasy part of it where it's kind of like the world's on the verge of industrial revolution, but before that it was inhabited by demons and humans, and then hundreds of thousands of years ago in the old time, this half demon half human with great magical powers banished the demons from the world. So magic still exists, but to use it you have to touch the other side, which is illegal in this world because that's the first law, is that you can't touch the other side for magic. And so that through line kind of creates the backdrop issue of the book. So it's just very well written, very characters you like, even the characters that aren't good, you really like them. Just super well written. Joe Abercrombie's a great writer. Number one is the Thrawn trilogy, or the Heir to the Empire trilogy.
I knew you were going to say this
by Timothy Zahn
1,000 times, because you actually recommended this to me years and years and years ago, and I started, and I'm like, I can't do this. It's going to screw me up with the movies.
This is what movies. The sequels to Star Wars should have been.
Yeah,
is these 3 books. And it's just about how it takes place after Return of the Jedi. There's 3 novels about how this secluded alien Grand Admiral from the Empire who was in the Outer Reaches comes back and just kicks the shit out of everyone.
Jade Mara's in.
This is the one Mara Jade was made.
Yeah, Mara Jade.
Yeah.
This is the book. He made Mara Jade. He made Grand Admiral Thrawn. He made Coruscant. Was invented in this trilogy.
Okay,
that was used obviously in the other sequels. So this book was written prior to the prequel movies.
Yes,
but it was a sequel to the 3 sequels to Return of the Jedi, and this is what the sequels should have just done. They should have just taken this 3 stories and did it. It is such a good story of, they defeated the Empire, and because the original Star Wars is a very good point of a small band of rebels overcoming a galactic empire and how they are successful. What's next, right? What's the next? How do you then create? Darth Zoom's coming in, and oh man, he's got you be careful, magic. No, he just wrote a really smart military mind who came in and used a foundling new republic and bureaucracy and the bullshit of democracy sucks. It's the best one, but it's still shitty. And they just use it right, and he comes in, and for 2.5 books, he just kicks the shit out of everybody. And you really get tied into this bad guy. And they did it so well. They made him live character now on the Star Wars shows, but it's, yeah.
Can I ask a question about the rankings?
Yeah.
Can you have, because you said it's the best series of books.
My top 5 novels/series.
Series.
Yeah.
No, okay, so there were singular novels. Those all weren't series.
Correct. All Quiet on the Western Front and I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream are all singular novels.
Okay, so have you read Dune?
No.
Okay, it's coming out this week, so I think we need to talk about it.
I've read it twice. I struggled through it the first time because I read it when I was too young.
It's a very intellectual story. It'd be hard to read if I was young.
I've read a bit of it.
16 or 17.
Yeah, it'd be really hard.
Really hard to read.
And I'm not gonna say I struggled reading it the first time when I was older, but it was challenging.
And then the original movie set me off so badly. It was so. I mean, it was done in the 70s, and it was just so 70s-ish.
It had Jean-Luc Picard in it.
Yeah, whatever.
With long hair.
Yeah.
Paul Atreides.
It's a good topic because the movie Part 2 is coming out this week.
Yep.
I watched Part 1, and I thought Part 1 was amazing. I hadn't read the book at this point. I watched it. It was amazing. It was probably one of my favorite movies in the last 15, 20 years. I loved it that much.
It was on his list.
I wouldn't go that far, but
the new one?
Movie.
The remake?
I love it.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a good one.
The remake, yeah. And then I'm like, I can't wait for Part 2. I need to know what this story.
They did very well in casting this time.
Casting was amazing, and with the exception, they took out 2 elements that I remember from the book for the first movie. Only 2. It was a dinner party that they had to welcome the Atreides to Arrakis, but the reason why they erased that was to erase another storyline thread, which was that
it made the movie so much longer.
Yeah, the other thread that they eliminated because they eliminated that, which I'm happy they did. I thought it was a good change because it didn't really work for me in the book anyway. Was the idea that Lady Jessica was possibly going to be the one to turn on Duke, on the Duke, right?
Yeah.
So I thought it was good. And then I had to read it. I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest book I've ever read in my life. Oh my God. And then I read it on a Kindle, and then I looked at how big the book was out. I'm like, holy shit, I just read that?
I read a big book.
It's like 5 inches thick.
It's a hefty book, which is average.
That's like
3
times the Tanner size.
Yeah. Average.
Average.
So I'm very excited for Friday. I'm taking the boy down IMAX showing of this bad boy. Oh yeah,
nice.
We're very excited.
Yeah.
What did you think about Dune, Mike?
I don't think it was the best movie ever made. That's for sure. Even in the last 5 years, kind of thing.
Okay.
No. But it was so much better than the first try.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit truer to the book, except for those things. I think they had to remove those things to make the story flow and be reasonably lengthy. Casting was amazing, and
so good.
And the special effects that they have now, compared to what they had in the 70s, I mean, that goes without saying. But
yeah,
I liked it. I didn't. I'll know more after I watch the second one because I didn't like the way the first one ended.
How are they going to film the second half?
Good question.
That's how are they going to film the second half of this book? It's going to be impossible.
Well, correct me if I'm not wrong, but are they not doing a third movie?
Well, the third movie is going to be the second Dune book.
Well, there's like
there's
9.
Six
but I thought they were cutting the first book into 3.
No, the first book is this Hobbit. One and this one, and then they're talking about whether this one's commercially successful.
Okay.
Making the second Dune book, which I mean, I've read that as well, and it was okay.
Is that Children of Dune?
No, that is what the hell?
Just Dune 2?
No, it is called Children of Dune.
Children of Dune?
I think it's called Children of Dune. It's just okay.
It's the only really exciting movie coming out because they canceled all the other ones off my list.
I'm going to ask Mike this question too, and I'm going to give one after too. Mike, you were saying earlier, Starship Troopers. Tell us about why you love that book.
So it's a science fiction written in the 50s, but it talks about what's wrong with the young offender system. It talks about what's wrong with our political system. It was written by one of the first libertarians, that there should be no government, or very little government.
Right.
Without getting into politics, because I know that's a lightning rod, but it talks about personal responsibility for everything you do. And you have to earn your vote. Anybody can vote.
Right, but you have to earn it.
You have to earn it by becoming a veteran. And it's basically the way the book is written is that it takes place hundreds of years after World War III, but World War III ended with a fizzle, and there was hundreds of thousands of prisoners of war, and all the great powers sat down and agreed to this. This is how we'll divvy up everything. But they forgot about the prisoners of war, and they let them dangle in the breeze. They never even worried about repatriation or anything. Mm-hmm. And so the way he wrote the book is, it's only a couple of paragraphs, and how he's brilliant in the way he writes it. These British soldiers get back after walking from India back to England, and obviously they take a boat at some point. But they get to their home, and it's lawless. There's no more government. Their families are in danger, so they just decide to take care of it themselves. And so they become basically police, fire, the government, and they just take over.
Yeah.
But without like an overt, there was no rebellion. It's just nobody's doing this shit. Like, we got to do it.
Yeah.
And that morphed into, and you weren't allowed to participate unless you were a veteran, because you went through what I went through, and then you don't understand until you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's how that whole political system morphed into running the world. And Johnny Rico is a very young kid who doesn't really care one way or the other. He's basically joins the military because he's following a girl.
Yeah.
And rebelling against his dad, who's well off and isn't a citizen. And his dad says, you don't need to be a citizen. Look how wealthy I am. I went to Harvard, blah, 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 blah. And he joins to piss his dad off because Carmen is joining the military as well.
Yeah.
And then the war happens. And he gets patriotism, but not patriotism of the flag. He gets it about the guy in the next launch tube next to him, because the technical stuff is 50s, right?
Yeah.
So it's very, it's not kitschy, but it was really, I read it first when I was like 15 or 16 years old. And so all the political stuff kind of went over my head. But then you'd go back to it and read it again and go, it's like kind of the same thing as Ender's Game.
Okay.
Ender's Game, the first time I read it, Orson Scott Card's another one, he's brilliant. The political system is, again, run by the military when they have to, because of this threat. And the movie is horrific. It's awful compared to the book. Ender is 6 years old when he's taken away from his family and sent up. Anyways, I could go on forever. These things,
we got time.
But the long and the short of it is, these authors are able to describe a political system that they've made up in their head, and the nth degree of what's wrong with them, and what's, both sides of it, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so it's it's not as like Verhoeven, whoever.
Paul Verhoeven.
Yeah, or Verhoeven. When he read that, I think he hated it, and so he decided to make a mockery of it.
Yeah, it was very campy.
And I think he did that on purpose.
Wink, wink at the camera.
I think he did it on purpose to make light of the book, because the book itself, I don't think you can make a movie about it anyways. It'd have to be 2 or 3. But the science fiction-y stuff, like the bugs, really, and that's a tough thing for us to take.
Yeah.
Well, not if you play Helldivers 2.
Helldivers.
Because them bugs come out, the bug holes, and you got to fucking shut them down for governed democracy.
I've got 2 books I want to just put on your guys' plate, if you're interested.
Yeah, tell me about it.
There's 2 books that I love. And so I read different books. I don't really always stick to the same genre, but I found a mystery novel that I think is the greatest mystery novel I've ever read. And it's called
Blue's Clues.
It's not Blue's Clues. Okay. It's called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Okay? And without spoiling it, if you're going to read it, I won't spoil too much. Long story is there's this character, you don't know who it is, and he has to live 7 lives in different scenarios. And so he lives different people to see different sides of the murder mystery to figure out how it all pieces together.
Okay.
It's so much more better than that. It's so well written, and you're on. It's like when you're reading a book. A lot of the time, you're in on everything that's going on.
Yeah.
You have no idea what's happening as you're reading it. Like you're
true mystery.
You are in the dark, just like the main character's in the dark.
Okay.
And because you don't even know the main character's name, it's beautiful. 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Cardcastle.
Got it.
By
Okay.
Stuart Turton. And the second one. So
Turton.
I'm a big, and this is not going to hit home with you as much, and I'm not sure about you, Mike. I don't know if you watch horror movies at all, but there's a horror book that I read. Sorry, I didn't write it. I read it. It's called My Heart is a Chainsaw. And it is by a guy named Stephen Graham, and he is. It's about this young girl who is an outcast in high school, or just out of high school. She didn't have friends. All her parents are either dead or have abused her. Society's given up on her. She doesn't have a job, and she's just a loner in this town. And to cope with her mental health, which is a good topic for this podcast.
Segue, yeah.
To cope with her mental health, she watches 80s, 70s, and 90s horror flicks.
Oh my
and
goodness.
she thinks 100%. She views every situation and conversation that she's in through the lens of one of the movies that she's watched. And so what's cool about that is this author drops so many Easter eggs about horror movies in this book. It just comes at you, and so it's to the point where you're reading this book that if you recognize it, you're like, okay, I'm in on it. I'm a part of this, and it's so interesting. If you're just trying to figure out all.
Don't go into the storage chainsaw storage room.
all the different.
So lots of nostalgia.
So she sees some weird shit going down in town.
Yeah.
And she is convinced, and not convinced. Let me use a different word. She hopes. She hopes that this is a slasher movie come to life.
This
And
is
she's
it. This is
ecstatic
the time.
to go and find the final girl and to educate her on how to survive this upcoming horror.
Don't make
And it
out
is-
with the high school football
I know.
player
Don't.
in the car.
Yeah. I'll be right back. I'm telling you guys.
My Heart is a Chainsaw.
If you
Okay.
can remotely stomach this kind of thing, it is a brilliant book.
Yeah,
Is it like a bloody, like hack and slash kind of, or
I mean, there's people die in it, but I mean, people die in all the books we've talked about.
Yeah, I know. Horror in a novel form is fine. I just don't like the movies.
Like
Like
if
too
you
scary.
there's a movie Scream that came out in 1996. I think you've probably seen
I've
it.
seen Scream,
Mike,
yeah.
have you seen the movie Scream?
no?
Well, there's a main character named Sidney Prescott.
Sydney.
So she references, doing things that Sydney would do and stuff like
Right.
that. And
Yeah.
and if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, I'm sure people will just read over it and go along.
Right.
But once you get it and you get a lot of the inside joke, not only will you want to go watch some of these movies afterward, just to get.
That's actually what ends up happening to me. Is like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? And then I'll go.
I gotta
find
go
it.
watch this.
I gotta
and
watch
it's
it.
and it's so cool. It's one of the cooler books I've read. So it's not as intellectual as the ones you guys have said, but it's just minor.
Well,
just fucking
I
cool.
think for all of our listeners out there, we just given you like 40 books.
Yeah.
We just threw. We haven't even
Read 'em all.
got to our guest's book
yet,
but we
which is
just
the
threw
next
40
one.
books out at you. So if you read anything, for God's sakes, read one of them. Yeah, that's the top five,
Top five.
And where it runs us off. So thank you for sticking with us there, Mike. And now we roll into questions for Mike.
Yes.
And let's get into the interview proper, as we do. Michael, give us a rundown of your published works.
Published, I just have one.
Okay.
And that's it's called So There I Was, 34 Years Wearing the Badge. So it's basically an autobiography but it's more of a memoir of my job that I retired from in 2022.
As a police officer.
Yeah. I started policing in 1988 in a smaller city in southern Alberta. And went from there so I was there 34 years. During that time, I was patrols, traffic, CID twice, schools. I was a hostage negotiator for 18 years. And we don't call them hostage negotiators anymore because there's very little hostage. It's usually just talking people into not killing themselves or somebody else. Stuff like that. And so, I worked homicide for a while. I worked organized crime for a while as a detective. didn't realize what it was doing to me until I was getting close to the end, and then things started to kind of mess me up a little bit, and got a little bit of help, and still not the same guy that I was when I'll give you an idea. The first chapter is about why I became a cop, and that's a story from when I was a missionary in my church. I was a Mormon missionary for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I had an experience in the last 6 months that, the long and short of it is basically, it's the day I got my Dear John letter, which was a wedding invitation, which is pretty cold.
This is the same one you took that to the movie.
What's that?
This is the same lady you took to that movie we were talking about?
Yeah, same lady that took the Footloose. This is the last movie we went to.
Goddamn Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, he ruins everything.
Fucking.
I just about texted him once, said, dude, we're 7 things separation from my life.
From burning me, Kevin Bacon.
That's right. The day I get my Dear John letter, or my wedding invitation, Dear John letter, my partner and I go knocking on doors to get my mind off it. And the first door we knock on is this guy that's 45-ish and fat slob, drunk as a skunk, wearing this is in Quebec City. Mm-hmm. And my French by then was really good, and my partner was newer. And the guy was wearing a Speedo and nothing else, and you couldn't tell because his gut was hanging over his Speedo. And he comes to the door, and he's got a 15-year-old girl on his arm, and he's got to be 45. And he's like, come on in. And all right, so we go in because, that's what we do. Yeah. And my partner isn't aware of it. He starts giving them the spiel, and my partner's not aware of it, but I know Buddy's making fun of us. Mm. So I just say, dude, wrap it up, give him to Jesus' love speech, we got to go. Yep. And so my partner gives him the thing, and kid says, who's 15 as well. Kid, turns out the boy brings 2 girls home from school. All 3 of them are cut school to get drunk with dad, and they probably more than just drunk, right? Well, I know there's more than drunk. There's coke there too, but anyhow.
I mean, it is in Quebec, so yeah.
Anyways, we give him the spiel, and he says, the kid hollers out, Dad, show him terrible. And I'm like, show him terrible? What do you mean? And he puts his hand out to shake my hand. An autonomic reaction from a Mormon missionary is if somebody goes to shake your hand, you shake, but then you hold on tight so he doesn't hurt you. Okay. And so he can't squeeze your hand because that happens a little bit. And then he won't let go. And then he reaches into a terrarium and pulls out a tarantula, well, a dinner plate size, as big as my head. And he puts it on my arm and says, yeah, you're my friend. And he takes it off. And he looks at my partner and says, are you my friend? And partner goes, you damn straight I am. So he does the same thing. He says, yeah, you guys are cool. How about a hit for the road? And again, this is all in French. And I'm like, hit for the road? I thought I was bilingual. Yep. And he says, hit for the road. He pulls out a bag of Coke, fires one, gives one to his kid. Oh, my God. And then he says, hit for the road. I'm like, no, man, we got to go. And I'm like devastated. This is the worst day of my life. Let's just watch this guy coke up 3 kids, and who knows what he's doing to the 2 girls in there. And as we're walking down, it's an outdoor walk up. The stairs on the outside of the apartments are so old, there's no elevator in the middle. So they're 3-story buildings they're called walk-ups. We walk out, and every time we walked in one corner, we looked over to the bus stop because we're gone. We're going to go to the mall or something, take our name tags off, and just go play video games. And because back then they had this place called Video Arcades.
Oh, I love those places.
So anyhow,
the kids call them Vidarks.
Vidarks.
Anyways, this guy's giving us the stare. He's sitting in the car, blue jeans and a t-shirt, and he's giving us the stare. And as we walk by the car, I see a radio in his lap, and I go, "Oh man, it's got to be a cop." And so I go over, "Hey man," he goes, "Yeah, we're waiting for you kids to get out. You see any coke?" But I go, "Yeah, back right pocket." He goes, "Cool, beat it." And my mindset, because I'm thinking as a missionary, he's going to go save those children. He's going to go make that guy repent and maybe change his life as well. And because every cop that I ever talked to after I told that story, they laughed at me, and I laughed too. But back then, that's really where I was. And that's why I decided to do this for a living, because when I left on my mission, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I got home. No clue.
Really?
Yeah. Knew I was going to go to school. Wanted to play ball in high school or college, because I did in high school. And I got home and didn't even try out.
Is that golf?
No,
basketball. Come on.
The real sport.
Oh.
Yeah.
Basketball?
Basketball.
Yeah. Well, they all have balls. How am I going to know? You just say, I'm going to play ball. That's 57% of sports.
Considerably bigger balls.
It's balls. Okay. That's all.
You're used to the small ones. It's fine.
Yeah, well, apparently.
So I get home, go to college, get hired in the job in the city that I went to college in, which and my wife grew up in. And I kind of lived all over the place anyway, so it didn't really matter to me. And was there for 34 years.
Mm-hmm. Is that story in the book?
That's the first chapter. Yep.
And so that's our first chapter, and then the book itself goes through.
Yeah. So it starts
kind of timeline of your career.
Yeah. It starts. It's in order, but it's not. There's not like there's just a couple of stories from each.
As we go.
Like the first murder I ever went to, first attempt. Like when I knew that I was a cop. Until it's going to turn into stories all night.
So we got
the first time, this is the old station, so 5th and 5th South, which is 5th Avenue, 5th Street South.
Downtown.
The building now is it's like a training facility for people trying to get jobs or something. But back in the day, that was the old station, and I was in traffic at the time. At 9 months service, I think I had me in a traffic car.
Wow.
And there's a long story to that too. Things were different in the 80s. Anyhow, dispatcher comes on and says, "Hey, I have nobody else to send. There's a guy that threatened a lady in the old folks' home right across the parking lot from the police station." And I go, "He threatened a lady, old folks' home. I can take care of this." Right? She says, "He had a knife, but we got the knife away. He's in the lane, or he's in the hallway. She's in the door. She's closed the door. She's safe. He's safe. Just come get him." That's the way it came across in dispatch. And so this is the deep-rooted thing that cops sometimes struggle with, what you get from dispatch. It has to do with the information they get, and then they pass on to you. And if you think that it's gospel, it's not dispatcher's fault. It's the person's fault for giving them half information and them taking it as whole information. So we get there, me and another guy I would have been there by myself at 9 months service, except the TAC team sergeant, thank heavens, is just pulling into the parking lot. He goes, "It's a knife call. I'll go with him." And he was a training sergeant at the time. He had no business going to calls. But he got in the elevator with me, and when you go to a call and a weapons complaint, you don't go and the elevator doors open on the floor. You get the incident happens. You go above or below and then walk up or walk down. But we didn't. The elevator door opens up, and every young kid born in southern Alberta knows what smell of burnt gunpowder. And I could smell burnt gunpowder. And I look around the corner, and there's this old man. I still remember this. He's in his late 80s. He's like this. He's like 5'3", heavy Ukrainian accent, and he's got a 22 rifle, and he's pointing it at a metal fire door, and it's got 5 bullet holes in it, and he's got rounds spilled all over the floor, and there's smoke coming out of the breech because he's cranked it open. He's reaching down to get more ammunition. So I come out on him with my old 357 wheel gun and go down the hallway, and he's just a little guy. And when I started, I was 6'1" and 240 pounds. I think I was football size. And as soon as I say, "Please put the weapon down," he puts it up, port arms, and puts it against the wall, and then puts his hands up. But she opens the door, and she comes out, and she's in a white cotton nightie, and she's soaked in blood. And I thought he'd shot her. So I reach across. I can't get my gun in my holster, so I grab him by the shoulder with my left hand, my weak hand, and I lift him off the ground and fire him over my shoulder. Randy catches him, bracelets him up as I push her in the room to keep her safe. And then I'm pulling at her nightie to look for the bullet holes, and she's slapping at my hands thinking I'm trying to look at her parts. And finally she says, "No, honey, it's up here." And then I look back, and he had grabbed her by the hair and taken a knife and cut her from the one ear to the other from back. And then her husband comes around the corner. He's an 80-year-old as well, and he's got a four-wheel walker. And he has 2 stab wounds on his chest. Guy stabbed him twice when he tried to stop him assaulting his wife. And that was the first violent crime I ever went to, and I think I had 9 months service.
Wow.
And it kind of got me into when I realized, I can do this, because they tease you when they think you're doing okay. They immediately started teasing me about trying to break the old man's hip.
Yep. Throwing an 80-year-old man?
Throwing an 80-year-old man to Joseph or Randy. And then of course I teased him back, dude, you're just about as old as he is. He could have broke your hip. And I knew if that was the job was for me then, because I fit in and that sort of stuff. And I'd made the right calls. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough thing to do when you're not. They had no training here at all. Like when we got hired in the 80s, day one, there was no training. All it was the college. They didn't even give you criminal law training. Here's your gun. Here's your bullets. Here's your car keys. There's your FTO. 2 weeks from now, we'll train you how to shoot the gun. You grew up on the farm though, right? You know how to shoot? Yes, sir. Mm. Okay, away you go. And then it was entirely on the, now we got 6 months training? And that's before, and then there's in-house training over and over and over, every whatever. And so things have changed a lot. I mean, they didn't have shotguns in our cars. Not because we didn't need them. The chief of police actually told us, we know you need them, but we don't want the citizens to think you need them. Mm-hmm. My first bulletproof vest, I had to pay half myself to prove that I would wear it.
Wow.
Yeah, there's stuff like that.
Yeah,
you tell guys that stuff. It's different from what it is. And thankfully, I loved it and I learned a lot, but I'm thankful that if my kid were to become a cop, I wouldn't want him to go through what I went through.
No. And we're gonna come back to the book. So there I was, I'm sure, throughout our questions to you, and it's really like it is that throughout.
Yeah.
Like I've read it, and it's one of the reasons I really liked it, and one of the reasons it did so well, which is I'll get to the next question here, is because it's very much real, and and while parts of it are going to be as crazy as you see on TV, the way you describe it and show it, you're able to kind of chip away the flashiness of television or movies, but there really isn't a lot to chip away because the stories are ridiculous. Yeah. Were you surprised when your book became a bestseller on Amazon?
Yes. I was shocked, actually. A friend of mine gave me a copy of he had downloaded it and sent it to me on my phone, and sent me the notification that because I wasn't following how many I'd sold or anything. I frankly, at that point, I didn't know how. Yeah, it was really difficult to even figure out the formatting. Amazon's really good, easy to self-publish.
Go ahead and sponsor this podcast, Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon. Yeah.
But the problem with it when you're in your 50s and you're not as computer literate as you could be a 20-year-old, it's difficult to just format things. And I had done a lot of technical writing, and you write a case report for a murder and it's like 200 pages, but it's technical writing. There's no
it's not narrative.
It's not narrative. You're just collating data and DNA because of this and all of that stuff, right? So it's you have to have a skill to do that, but it's different, right? And so, and you always had the fallback of the girl. Erin was our girl, and when I was in CID the second time, hey Erin, how do I do this? And she'd come over to your computer and and away you go, and then you could keep typing, right? So the long and the short of it was I was shocked that there was people on the job there's one young female detective who she bought 10 copies.
Oh, wow.
She bought 5 for herself, and she gave one to her mom, and her mom called her in Calgary, and mom called her and said, buy 5 more for me because I got friends I want to give them to.
Wow.
And that was in the first week, like the first week of delivery, right? Yeah. So I know people that gave, all their siblings and stuff like that as gifts.
It's, that is important, and that's word of mouth is crazy, but it went bestseller within a week, and it stayed there for like 3 weeks of that genre. So, it also is, it obviously kicked a nerve with people, and people like cop stories, but I think the real ones, right?
Yeah.
So it was really awesome.
An authenticity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't hold back the mistakes I made either. Like there's a great, the first murder suspect I ever interviewed, I screwed that up so bad I just about downed the case, really? Like cooked it. And 7.5 hours it took me in the interview room to save the file and it worked because I have the gift of gab and was able to talk him into giving me but in essence, I arrested him. Do you understand what you're under arrest for? And I said, 1st-degree murder. And he's like, and his bottom lip's quivering right from the get-go. And I'm sitting next to him, and I said, while we're waiting for my partner to gather his stuff, and I'm just babysitting him, but I got the audio recorder going, and I said, I look over and his bottom lip is quivering. I go, dude, this is freaking killing you. What do you do? And he told me everything. But the last thing he said before he told me everything was, yes, I want to call a lawyer. Mm-hmm. In Canada, you can talk to a guy as long as you want after he calls his lawyer. It's not like the States and all that TV stuff. Mm-hmm. But you have to give him the lawyer first before you get into it. He told me he wanted a lawyer. I said, you bet. And then I asked him a question, and he answered it. Totally inadmissible.
Oh, no.
And then now when I go back and interview him again, I can't use any of the information that I got from him in that blurting out, as if it never happened. And then he knows that I'm asking the same, you know what I mean? So there's that whole, that's why it took 7.5 hours.
Wow.
It was a tough go, and I learned a lot from it. But so I'm human in it as well. And there's some... Like the very first word that I ever heard my first duty staff sergeant say was, you love this. My police service was a different place in the 80s. Policing in general was different in the 80s.
Yeah.
And you remember, Canada didn't have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms until 1982. I got hired in 1988. Mm-hmm. My FTO was a pre-charter cop. My sergeant got hired in 1955. My staff sergeant was hired in 1962. Those guys, which freaks me out because when I left, one of the girls on my team, one of the brand new girls on my team, I'm going on and on about Mike Balance was great. He's dead now. He was such a cool sergeant, but he got hired in 1955, and I'm going on about how old he was. He was like 35 years younger than me. And then I'm talking to this girl, and she's like, dude, same thing. And I'm Mike Balance.
Oh, no. Yeah. I'm old as shit.
So, but the very first thing my staff sergeant said, not to me, it was in the table, was he had just got back from South Africa from holidays. This is back when Nelson Mandela was still in jail, apartheid was still going, and the Berlin Wall was still up and all that stuff. And he says, the dirty Kafirs don't deserve the vote. And I'm Kafirs, the Afrikaans for the N-word.
Right.
And I wasn't raised that way.
No.
And my generation wasn't raised that way. And I'm like, holy crap. And I look over to my FTO, who's a really, really good guy. He says, shut your mouth, son. We'll sort this out. And so later that night, so everybody else on the team just attacks him. You can't talk that way. This isn't the 40s, blah, 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 blah. Later that night, we get dispatched to a suspicious person complaint on the west side. And I reached for the mic because that's part of the gig is the rookies got to learn because back then we didn't do clear radio communications at all. We didn't talk normal.
Okay.
All 10 codes, 500 codes.
Yeah.
Even going for lunch was, anyhow, everything had a code. It's a long time ago, man.
What was the code for peeing?
I don't know.
Was there a different code for peeing and pooping?
No, there wasn't.
You were 525 in the station?
Like a 10-1.
525 at the station.
10-1 pee, 10-2 poop?
No. You don't go number 1 or number 2. No. It's none of their beeswax.
Dispatch, I'm 10-2ing. There's so much 10-2.
Oh, so much 2.
Oh, no.
Stop it.
There's 10-4. There's so much. Sorry, hard.
So anyhow, we're going to this dispatch call, but it's not the dispatcher dispatching. It's just the duty staff sergeant, which never happens. Even then, it didn't happen. And so I reach for the mic, and my FTO goes, FTO's a field training officer. He slaps my hand. He goes, I got this kid. What's suspicious about him, staff? And he goes, well, he's black, and he's on the west side. And my FTO goes, yeah, we're not going. Call your complainant back. Tell him to get over himself because that's not a police call. And hung the thing up. I learned so much from that. And this is the 80s. And the staff sergeant and the sergeant were God, especially to a probationary class 5 constable.
Yeah.
And my FTO just said, no, we're not going. Do it yourself. Which set a really good tone for me because there was a couple of road bumps along the way because there were very few problem children, even with being pre-charter cops. Most of them adapted really well. Mm-hmm. And I'm told that most guys gave guys phone calls anyways, but they didn't have to. and now you have to. But back then, didn't you have to tell them, no, you want a phone call? Yeah, sure, go ahead, fill your boots. We didn't care. Most guys didn't care. But there were a couple guys that made it their mission in life to make things difficult.
Hate change.
Yeah.
Hey, people aren't going to play with change.
It gave you a good ethical backbone then.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. The second chapter talks about 3 weeks on the job. I'm with a guy who I really looked up to. The first thing he said to me is, what are you doing here? Go to Calgary. This place is awful. And on and on and on about how bad my police service sucked. And then we get dispatched to a bush party in the river bottom, which is the river goes through the middle of the city, and there's this huge park down there. And we go to break it up because the fire's out of control, and there's like 150 people down there howling at the moon. And as we're going down the hill, see this 15-year-old kid walking down, and he's First Nations kid. And my partner, who's driving, and I'm in the passenger seat, and the kid's on my side of the van. So he says, tell the kid to beat it. We're going down to break the party up. So I roll the window down. He comes to a stop, say, hey, man, what's your name? What you doing? He goes, I'm just going down to the party to get my brother because he's going to take me back home. I went, okay, you want to ride? And the kid goes, really? Yeah, sure, man. Hop in the back. I'll give you, we'll take you down, hop in with your brother, and away you go. He goes, cool. I put him in the back of the van, and then I come back into the car, and I look at my partner, and he's mad. He is just, there's steam coming out of his ears. But he doesn't say anything. And then we start up again, and we're going down the hill, and maybe 100 meters further, and a car starts coming up, and the kid can see through the peephole of the back of the van. He can see the car coming up. It's his brother. So he starts banging, hey, let me off. And my partner slams it in park, and it doesn't stop moving yet. So it's down the hill. And he gets out of the car. And so I get out of the car, and what the hell's going on? I go around the back of the van, and he's got the kid by the scruff of by the front of his jersey, like his shirt. And he's open-handed, fisted, slapping him left, right, just whap, whap, whap. And that 3 weeks on the job. And so I step between them. I actually have to push this old guy off of this 15-year-old kid. And I'm standing between him, and it's almost like he came to.
Right.
He woke up.
Okay.
But the kid's looking at me. He's trying not to cry. He's leaking a little bit, but he's trying not to cry. And I said, are you all right? And he said, yeah, man, I just want to go home. I says, is that your brother? He says, yeah, but my grandma lives at the top of the hill. Just let me go home. He said, we can give you a ride. He says, no, don't want to ride, blah, 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 blah. I told him my name. He said, I don't care. Just let me go. Got him to repeat my name back to me, and then kicked him loose because I wanted to put him in the van and make him, make sure he's safe. But
yeah.
After what he's been through, you can't really do that.
Yeah, not a safe place for him anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So I sent him on his way, and then I went at the end of shift, and we get back in the car, and I look over at my partner. He's just like it never happened.
Wow.
And down to the bottom of the hill. So that's kind of, that makes it sound a lot worse than it was, because it wasn't all that way at all. It just, there were glimmers of that, like, what are you thinking? And I'm sure young kids getting hired with me when I was their sergeant would probably think some of the same things too, but I never trotted on anybody's charter rights or any of that sort of stuff, willfully anyways.
Yeah.
But it's a generational thing, and you think the old people are all retards and you know better than them and stuff, but slapping a 15-year-old kid just because he's making noise in the back of your van, that's past the line.
Well, tell it to my grandmother, because I would get the shoe quite a bit. A lot of young side there, and kind of finding out where the writing took place. So, what made you get into writing in the first place? So, a lot of it turned into catharsis. I was pretty messed up by the end of my job. Series of unfortunate events, the calls going to. I went to a triple homicide that was horrific, and then I went to worked in homicide right after that, and we had 4 murders in 4 months, unrelated to each other, and one of them was an infant, and the other one was a daughter killing her mom, and blah 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 blah, and one of them was a woman who got stabbed in the chest by her daughter. And she's still alive when the cops get there. They did 12 dying declarations. It's called if
if a person thinks they're going to die and you as a policeman say, who did this to you? And they give you a name, the judge can view that as he can say that that's a value in evidence because they think they're going to die. And so they're declaring who did this to them kind of as a last thing. She did that 12 times. First cop shows up. She goes, am I going to die? I don't know, dear. Ambulance is on the way. Who did this to you? How'd this happen? My daughter did this. Which one identifies the daughter? And all the while, the knife in her chest is moving because it's moving with her heartbeat. Ugh. And so this happens, and then the paramedics get there, and they ask her. Then they get her in the van, and they ask her, and she tells them again. And then they get her to emerge, and the nurse asks her, and she tells the nurse, and then the doctor to emerge, and the doctor, she tells the doctor, up to the surgeon and the anesthesiologist, putting her under. And then as she goes under, the doctor is furiously trying to sew her heart back together because the knife, every time her heart beats, the knife is going into her heart more because it's just in enough that the tip is filleting her heart as it's beating. Yep. And so she dies on the table. And her daughter is already out. That happened in 2016. She got out 4 years later.
Out of jail.
Yeah.
So Canadian justice system.
So what made you get into writing in the first place?
Oh, sorry.
That's a story.
All of that stuff was a burden to me. And I should back up. So the first novel I ever wrote was in the 90s. And it was a fluff piece of fiction that meant nothing. It was 130,000 words, and it was just spinning ideas. Yeah. And I had started a second one as well because it's always been something that I wanted to do. And then my first son came along, and my only son, and that became time intensive. And then your life kind of takes a different turn. And then my job started. I became a hostage negotiator and on call all the time. And I think I still hold the record. And of all the negotiators, I think I still have more call outs than all of them put together because I did it for 18 years and I never once said I've been drinking because I can't, because everybody knows I don't drink. They phone me. So I had one staff sergeant who would call me first every time because he knew if I answered the phone, I was coming. And I would tell my wife, if you answer that phone, I got to go. And so she'd forget.
Let it ring.
She'd answer the phone, forget, and go, oh, yeah, he's here. Just hang on a second. I'll be right there, Jimmy, kind of thing. But so my life got busier and busier. The first two novels, for example, were written in WordPerfect. That's how long ago, right? Yeah. And then
first electric typewriter.
Yeah, pretty close. And then as I was getting closer to the end of my career, realized I had some really good stories to tell. And I started just sitting down writing the stories. And then I got to the last portion, and I was ready. I was telling the story of I'll tell you the story real quick. A friend of mine and I in college, we had hired within a year of each other. He's a really sharp guy, like really capable guy. And he comes to me one day, we're on the same patrol team, and he says, I think I'm going to go into schools for 5 years. Like you can apply lateral transfer to go to different areas of the company, right? Mm-hmm. Nowadays, you kind of plan your career. Like I planned my career. I wanted to go CID as much as I could. So my specialty, I guess, would be criminal investigation stuff. He was more interested in kids and helping people kind of thing. Yeah. And so I said, dude, go and you won't get promoted. And he said, I don't care about that. So he goes to schools. And then 5 years later, he comes back and we're now on the same team. I'm his acting sergeant. And we're sitting in front of one of the bars in downtown, and it's 2 a.m, and you fire a cannonball down the road. Nobody hit nothing. There's nothing going on. And we're just talking. This kid walks up behind him. This kid is like 6'3" and 240, and he's huge. And he's walking up behind Tom. And I say, Tom, turn around. There's a guy coming up behind you. And Tom turns around, and the guy goes, Tom? And Tom looks at the guy, and they recognize each other, and then they start hugging. Yeah. Then they start crying, which never happens in uniform. You don't do that on the street ever, unless you're in your car by yourself and whatever, right? Yeah. And they're bad, and then the kid's holding him, and excuse my French, he says, he saved my fucking life. He says, he's pointing at me as he's still hugging Kramer with the one arm. Yeah. And I'm like, holy cow. And so kid, catches up, and then he walks away, and I said, Tom, you got to tell me that story, man. And he says the kid wasn't a problem child in school. He was just what they call a cop group. He was just a young kid that would follow the cops around. And one day the kid stopped coming to school, and he just thought, maybe I should go check on him. No reason to, so he goes to the kid's house and finds him literally locked in his bedroom, getting fed under the door and, abusive, blah, 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 blah. He gets him out of that situation, gets him in foster care, blah, 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 blah. That kid now, every time he talks to anyone about cops, how they saved his life, how any child that kid has thinks the cops walk on water because what they did for my dad, blah, 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 blah. So all that ripple effect that Tom did in that job probably made way more difference than me catching murderers. At least
that's generational impact.
It's generational, right? Yeah. I just put somebody in jail for killing somebody. He not just doesn't fix the one problem, but he stops the second problem from possibly happening or probably happening if the guy is still messed up from harm and all that stuff. So I write that story, and then the very next story. So I'm just writing these stories down and kind of not in
consecutive.
Consecutive.
There we go.
Nope.
They're not in any order. And then the next story I have is I did a 3-hour negotiation where the first 2 hours the kid was talking to me like this. He had a rifle barrel in his mouth. And I actually have a picture of it on my phone because the bomb robot drove up he was in a car. And he's trying to get the cops to stop him. So he'd initiate high-speed chases, and we don't chase for traffic and stuff. So he'd take off. They'd get the plate and let him go. And so third or fourth time, there's this big, huge river valley, and it has this highway across the river. And it's 80, 90K per hour, 90K per hour, I think. And they got an OnStar to shut the car down. So it shut down 3/4 of the way up the hill and then tacks around it, including the bomb robot that goes up and looks inside and take a picture of this kid with the phone in his hand here and a rifle, and a Chinese SKS rifle in his mouth. And I'm in the vehicle behind him. And for 3 hours, I'm talking to him. The first 2 hours, you're talking like this. And the third hour, he no longer has the rifle in his mouth. But it takes me a while to clue in because I'm in the conversation with the kid, what's going on in your life, blah, blah, blah. And the third hour, I finally clue. I said, dude, where's the gun? He goes, I have it out of my mouth. I have it pointed at my belly button. I said, if you pull that trigger, you're going to hurt me. I'm in the car behind you. He goes, I'm so sorry. And he moved the rifle to make it so that it would point out away from both of us. And that's the first time I realized, he's not going to kill himself, because I thought for sure he's going to splatter his brains all over the wall or all over the inside of his car. And that's the epiphany I had, that I'd gotten through to the kid, and then he comes out and, whatever. But as I'm finishing that story, I have this epiphany. I realize that there's no hubris, there's no pride, there's no boasting in saying that I saved that kid's life. It's just the facts. Nobody else did. It was me and him on the phone. And when I told him, I spent 3 hours of my life with him and listened to him genuinely what this problem was. And he listened back, and he came out of the car, and I saved his life, just like Kramer saved that 12-year-old kid's life. But we let all the negative things drown out that noise so loudly that you let that that's the only thing you see. And so I get to that second story, and I realize, I got to go back and rewrite the whole thing. And because now it becomes this is why I did this. And then I go through this journey of how I progressively get more damaged, I guess. And then to this epiphany in the last chapter is basically, it's called Cumulative PTSD is the name of the chapter. And it's about how I recognized it, and how messed up I was with, like, inappropriate humor is apparently one of the things. And I can tell you that story if you want. But anyhow, I didn't realize until I had this epiphany. I'm on the stand giving evidence in a triple homicide where the 3 victims aggregately were stabbed, they think, 487 times. And the guy broke 4 knives. So he snap, goes to the kitchen, gets another one, comes back, snap, goes to the kitchen, gets another one, and does this. Right? It's just horrific. And I was scheduled to be 10th on the stand, and all the young constables were supposed to go before me. And then the Crown prosecutor gets to constable number 2, who's still on probation, and the defense lawyer is just eating them alive. And so he moves me up to number 3. So I'm not prepared. And then the Crown prosecutor is clearly not prepared either, because he was not bringing his A game, let's put it that way. So he hands me pictures of the scene, which were horrific. Blood spatter as high as your eyes could see, and the lake of blood from 3 people in the main. He tried to move the bodies too. So there's, anyways. And I'm on the stand, and he's asking me these questions, and I'm just got the pictures, and I'm describing what happened, and things like, how do you know most of the stab wounds on the woman were post-mortem? Because when the knife goes into a body, the skin collapses on it, and then when you pull the knife out, the skin comes out, and it kind of erupts in a volcano kind of thing. And blood goes as well, unless the blood's not circulating anymore. And then the fatty tissue shows, and she had a myriad of stab wounds across the top of her chest and her breasts. And you could tell that no blood was flowing. And it wasn't when she was being stabbed. So most of those were post-mortem.
Right.
Or possibly, I'm not a doctor, so possibly, I've seen a lot. But so anyhow, I'm giving this evidence on the stand in graphic detail. And not a zero emotion, like nothing. It doesn't bother, to this day, it doesn't bother me. And he asks me a particularly stupid question, and I'm mad. And I'm looking down at the pictures, and he asks me this question. I look up at him like, I'm really mad at him. Mm-hmm. And right behind him is the mother of the 2 of the 3 people that I had just described dead in graphic detail. And I knew the mother too, because she was a young offender when I started, and I used to arrest her for stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a cyclical thing, right? But, or a generational thing. But I realized, and she's just sobbing inconsolably. And I realized that that's how I should be feeling.
Right.
But I didn't. And so there's something wrong with me. I got to get some help. 3 weeks later, I was in homicide and didn't have time to. So it prolonged, because I moved. The transfers happened about that time, and I got transferred to violent crimes that next January. Wow. And we had 4 murders, and
then it continues to pile on without having that break.
I got 3 questions for you. Well, 2 questions and a comment.
Okay.
First comment, I want you were describing those 2 stories. With the guy who had the gun in his mouth, and then the Tom Kramer story. Mm-hmm. And I want you to know that's how impactful your book is, because I was kind of tearing up when that happened, when you said that story. So I can only imagine how impactful your book is.
I was tearing up when it happened too, yeah.
Second thing, what was my other? Okay, yeah. So when you write a book, do you... so police information is so how does that work? Like, do you have to get permission from the service? Do you have to get permission from the people that are in your stories? Or like, how do you do that?
So first off, every name is changed. I don't use any surnames, and so the staff sergeant that said the dirty Kaffers don't deserve the vote, I didn't even use his fake name.
Okay.
I just said my first staff sergeant said this.
Right.
And those of the people that work with me know who my first staff sergeant was.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he's alive anymore or not. Like I said, he got hired in 62 or 64 or something like that. I was born in 1964, and I'm 60 years old this year.
Yeah.
I have edited things. So, for example, the triple homicide, every word that I said is in court records. So that's public record. Mm-hmm. Anything that isn't in so there are some files that So, for example, when you go to violent crimes, you get handed 3 or 4 or 5 cold cases that are still unsolved, and none of them are in there because they're not before the court. They're not. Okay. And every name has been changed, and I don't think I've even mentioned So the Tony Gallup, when he killed Jessica's 5-year-old girl.
Jessica Koopmans.
I was I was mentioned in the newspaper, and the not National Post, something else, a Toronto one, because all I did was I was babysitting him in the psych ward afterwards. I was well before I was ever in CID, and because they put him in psych to get him tested before they took him to jail, he was remanded to psych ward, and psych isn't capable of taking care of a child murderer and making sure that they don't run. And so we had overtime. Somebody volunteered to work and get paid overtime, and I worked one night shift. And he was causing problems that night, and he comes out, and he was maybe chin high on me. He's not a very big guy. And he comes out and he starts doing, just pounding me in the chest with his finger. You hate me. And I'm standing there taking it, and then finally I'd had enough. Grabbed his finger and I twisted it down. I said, "Don't you ever touch me again, man. Because I'm nervous. I don't want to do anything to screw up the case."
Absolutely, yeah.
And then he says, "You hate me because I killed that girl."
Oh.
Notebook.
Yeah.
That happens a lot to you. People start admitting shit to you.
And then that got entered into evidence, and then they mentioned the justice that convicted him of first degree mentioned that as one of the things that twisted it or tipped his mind. One of the very small things, like the detectives on that file they went against when you get assigned a murder case as a detective, you get a Crown prosecutor that is assigned as a advisory Crown prosecutor to help you with the legal issues. He doesn't get to say charge or don't charge, but if you don't listen to him, you're stupid.
Okay.
Because he's a lawyer and he's going to be running the case probably anyways, right?
Absolutely.
The Crown prosecutor in this case told the detectives in that file, "You don't have enough, don't charge him." So they were watching him, and they watched him basically start to take his own life. He had set up, he was going to gas himself on a golf course kind of thing. And I wasn't there, so this is what I heard. And so they jumped out of their car and go and arrest him to stop him from killing himself. And then I'll be able to get him to admit to it. And he never got him to admit to it. And so, long story short, they had to do all it the hard way and the evidence gathering and all that sort of stuff. And they convicted him anyways. Yeah. Then it went to the Court of Appeal or even the Supreme Court. I can't remember. And they continued the conviction. So, then when I went to major crimes course in Ottawa, and CPC once is how to investigate murders, and it's a 2-week course, I think, and I don't even know if they do it anymore, but back then they had 1 day was
how to investigate murders is a 2-week course.
2
weeks, you're good.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, but it's 2 weeks
murdered,
but it's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks to a guy that's been a cop for 15 years.
Okay, fair enough.
And really, when you think about it, every assault is just every murder and assault that just went bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, no, it really is.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So, and by the time you've been a cop 15 years, if you're in patrol division especially, you've done more than enough assaults to figure out. Right? So now, granted, they're a lot more technical and there's a lot more at stake if you screw up, but they're still not, it's not
because you're missing a witness.
Yeah, exactly. They can't go and say, yeah.
We're one witness short in this case.
Yeah. But back to the original thing is in writing it, I didn't want to take it to the administration and say, can I publish this?
Right.
And you also have to sign a letter of non-disclosure when you retire.
Right.
Neither of this breached that.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Did you consult someone for that?
No.
Okay.
I just made sure that I had talked to. I was talking to, I think it was homicide cop in Calgary. I can't remember. I talked to somebody and, "Hey man, what do you think?" And he's like, "Oh, no, I know who it was." No, it wasn't him either. I was going to say, I know one of the guys from the First 48.
Sure.
He's in Tulsa Homicide. And I got a great picture of him holding my book, reading it in an airport, waiting to go. But it was already published by the time I talked to him. So, but anyhow, it just as long as you don't name names, and everything that happened is almost everything is court record, which is public record anyways.
Right.
So even admission, when you admit a statement in the record, a warrant statement or something, it now becomes public record, and technically somebody from the Sun can do a data dump and get that information anyways.
2 questions. Sorry, one small one. Did you name the service that you worked for in the book?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Second,
It's the Lethbridge Police Service.
fair enough.
Alberta.
Lots of publicity.
Yeah.
Second question. If you were a decision maker going back, would you have psychological testing or something like a well-being check on each officer before they got transferred to a specific division?
So they do for some, or they do coming out of some, I think, right?
But going in.
So
because you mentioned you got 2 weeks later got put in, right?
Right. I would not do. I think the way they do it now is really good, in that you go into ICE, for example, which is integrated child exploitation, as child porn stuff on the computer, and much worse than that. It's way worse than just child porn. Mm-hmm. Human trafficking and all that stuff too, right?
Okay.
And horrific things that you see. One of my partners when I was in organized crime now works for Calgary ICE, and he left Lethbridge and went to Calgary, and he's been up there forever. And it's a hard job, especially if you got kids. But even if you don't have kids, it's a really, really hard job. Probably the hardest. And they require you to have a psychological assessment every year.
Okay.
Coming out of undercover drugs, to go back to patrols, you have to have you have to be assessed, I think.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
But coming out of violent crimes, you got to have something, right?
I disagree, because it's like I said, it's homicide is just an assault that went bad, and you've been dealing with those for 15 years. Is
there any worry that like to give you a really baseline example, so let's say you don't want to take a hearing test for your job because if your hearing is bad, you might lose your job. Is it something like that?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So in my case, the job is changing. Or the mindset of guys is changing. A really good friend of mine, was a traffic sergeant when I was a school sergeant, and I had already been out of homicide. Mm-hmm. And this is the first job. So out of 34 years of policing, I had 3.5 years total not being pointy end of the spear. Mm-hmm. Either patrols, traffic, or CID. Yeah. That's 31 years of that was all going to calls.
Yeah.
And then, and some pretty graphic ones.
Yeah.
And I was a square peg in a round hole when they put me in schools. It was awful. I hated every minute of it because I knew I was failing, because they did it to me in my 2017. So 2017 and 2018. And so I was
your late years.
I was well over 30 years service.
Okay.
Or 30 years-ish service. And I just wasn't just, if they'd have got me at 5 years service, that'd be okay. And I would have probably learned a new skill set, but by then it's a little late. So anyhow, I'm sitting around the room one day with a friend of mine who's a traffic sergeant at the time, and I am losing my nut. One of the people that worked for me got a file. She was just actually helping a patrol team out, and went in to interview this girl, and finds out this girl used to be one of the kids that she was a school resource officer for when she was a little kid. Mm-hmm. And she's like, "What happened to you?" And the girl just starts crying, and she admits that she was sexually assaulted, and on and on and on. And her counselor, her psychologist said the only way to get over this is A, don't go to the police, and B, go to the scene of the crime that you got sexually assaulted. This happened
exposure therapy. That people
and just cry it out.
Exposure therapy.
Bullshit.
5 years
people
ago.
love it.
It was awful. And so I am insensate. I'm so mad, because this is a guy that at the time, that psychiatrist was one of the guys that we would call out as a negotiator.
Yeah.
To come and help us if we needed a psychologist to give us a hand.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm never calling that guy. It's his own daughter. What's wrong with you? These two unknown black men take her out of a car in the parking lot of a building, or of the soccer center, on the pavement, and sexually assault her full bore. And then she goes home, and Dad says, "Don't go to the police." So how many more happen because of that? And then just go back to the soccer center every week and cry it out. That's insane, right? But this is a psychiatrist. So anyhow, I am ranting. I am so angry because I had just found this out, and I said in passing, just to Wade, I said, I probably got PTSD, but there's no effing way that I would go to this guy, blah, 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 blah. And Wade just said, if it was somebody else, would you go? And I said, yeah, probably. And then just kept going. And he wrote that down, went up to HR. Hey, Mike's having a problem. I had an email the next day. You understand you might be having a problem. Set an appointment up for you today. If you want to go, you're welcome. We got the tab. You're welcome to go if you want. I went. And I probably wouldn't have, except I told Wade I would. And Wade had the stones to go to the administration, which is, so you do that to a 5-year constable and he thinks you ratted him out. You do that to a 30-year constable and he, or a 30-year cop, and he goes, oh man, that took stones.
Yeah.
And we've built this relationship for how many years, and he really does care about me. And he knows that I'm hurting. And so I went, and the doc says, oh, dude, you got it bad. So and then the company paid for me to go see him. And then the administration actually did something. I was the test case when I retired. When you retire, they offer you the next 4 visits to a psychiatrist for free. They pay for it. Okay. No matter whether you need it or not, they encourage you to go just to get stuff from the job off your chest.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, 4 visits is nothing, but it's at least
something,
right?
Let me ask you this. This is probably a harder question. Taking in your whole career, is it a fine line between passion and anger? Is that close to each other? Do they feed off each other? Like,
I was thinking about that. I was actually thinking about that on the way. Part of it is stupidity on my part. Just being, I'm the cops. Mm-hmm. I was especially hard on some dispatchers. I think I made 2. I know one girl got fired as a result of interaction she had with me on the radio, and I should have felt bad about that.
Okay.
I know now that she could have killed me. I was out with a guy who we were looking for somebody for an armed robbery with a handgun at a pizza place, and I stopped a guy. Then he's driving his car, and I stop him. He matches the description to a freaking T, and he produces to me a Stony Mountain federal penitentiary identification card, meaning he's been in jail, and you don't get into Fed prison unless you've done something really bad. Yeah. That's his only ID he's presented me. When I query him for warrants, those sorts of things, the dispatcher says he's clear. He's got no criminal record.
Nope.
And I'm out by myself, and it's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And this guy, I don't know what he's went to prison for, but it's not outstanding warrant for break and enter. It's like a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm investigating a weapons offense where a guy put a snub-nosed 32, nickel-plated 32 to a guy's nose and took his money. So I went off on the radio, and I shouldn't have. I should have gone up and talked to her boss, and hey, this is what happened. You need to sort this out, man, because it could have got me hurt. But I did it publicly, and that was something that I'm ashamed of. I'm glad she got fired, though, because she legitimately could have got me killed.
Probably saved lives.
Yeah, because they're just like cops, dispatchers. There's people that can't do that job. That job, I follow a thing on Instagram now where it's just 911 calls. I couldn't imagine getting that sobbing voice on the radio, on the phone, without being able to be there and be the cop and save the day, and still get the information you need, and all of those sorts of things. And then the emotional turmoil you're going through. You're talking to a 5-year-old, mommy won't wake up. Yeah. I mean, I went to a murder once where one of my guys, his aunt is murdered by his uncle, and he's working that day. And I assign him to go to the scene first, and he rolls up and says, "I can't go in because it's my aunt's place." Yeah. He has his niece and nephew in the police car because his 5 and a 3-year-old answer the door for the newspaper at 6 a.m. to collect for the newspaper. Little girl goes in and finds mom bludgeoned to death with a baseball bat and smothered with a pillow, and blood spatter on the roof and everything. It was awful. And then daddy hung himself in the basement. But
quitter.
Exactly. But you know what I mean? Like,
So is it fair to say then, like, going back to that in public safety jobs, passion, because you dealt with. It's mostly negative stuff. You show up and there's no good calls. There's no like, hey, we did it.
Very, very few. Yeah.
Passion fuels anger, and anger fuels passion for your job or for a result. Or
I'm not sure about anger because I don't know whether I was ever angry. Well, I was angry a couple times.
Angry at people who did something like were you never angry at the guy who killed Jessica?
The bad people.
The bad people. You're never angry at them, and that fueled passion for the job.
But you learn real quick. Not to, because I worked with guys that were pre-charter that would act on that anger.
Fair.
Right?
Yeah.
So you learned real quick to direct that internally, I guess, and that's probably one of the reasons why the top of my head explodes half the time.
Yeah.
But it's also a talent that some people have that others don't. Like, you can tell guys that can keep it together or... So I've had guys that I love on my team, my patrol team. I think of one guy that I reamed out. So we go to a stabbing, and this is a real quick story, but we go to a stabbing where, I know, we go to the stabbing and...
Okay, guys, he should be allowed to tell one story this whole interview, okay? Yeah. Just give him a break.
Give him a break.
He should be allowed to tell one.
We go to the stabbing, and one of the guys on my team has just been reassigned from traffic, and he'd been in traffic for probably 10 years. And it's real important when you go to that house, you're in the house legally. You can't leave until you don't need it anymore. Because the moment you walk out of that house, you have to write a search warrant to get back in again.
Yeah.
But if you're in there lawfully, you can stay until you're not needed to be there anymore. Right? So I say to this guy, dude, your one job is to stay in this house until I tell you not to come out, until I tell you to leave. He goes, yes, sir. And then I walk out of the house and I take 5 steps and I turn around and he's on the freaking grass in front of us. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What did I just... And I lost my shit on him.
I just take a 10-1, Sarge. 10-1.
Yeah. 10-1 on the grass.
And so that comes from passion, but it's also... Cops have thick skin for the most part, and so he realized, oh, I screwed up. I should have really listened to what he said. And then when I calmed down, I said, this is why, man. Then it turns into a teaching moment. Mm-hmm. But you can't be, oh, shucks, take your arm around him. And, at the heat of the moment, you got to tell him on no uncertain, because if you don't, my direction might be hold your weapon at that point, and if somebody comes around that corner holding a weapon, I need you to do A, B, or C. Mm-hmm. And if he says, oh, Mike didn't really mean that, or it's not really that important, or whatever.
It's like A Few Good Men. Oh, we'll do important orders, and which ones are the really important orders?
Exactly. So, but it's not, that's taking it to the extreme, but you know what I mean? Like, I would, police aren't like the military where you shoot no matter who's coming around that corner. Don't do that. We don't do that. But at the same time, if I say nobody gets past there without who they are, that means he's better be there and not let anybody pass, because he doesn't know what he's protecting behind him.
Yeah.
Right? And you can't take the time to explain it to him either. And what's worse, when you get back to the dispatch thing, is I don't have time when I'm dealing with shithead with the possible gun who's done the armed robbery to soft sell the dispatcher who's clueless about, well, golly, maybe he does have a criminal record. Because,
soft sell anybody, really.
Yeah, exactly, because I'm going now.
Yeah.
And I don't really have the time to spoon feed her. And in fairness, this lady she was a holdover from the old fire dispatchers and she didn't really know how to dispatch police.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
And so she was probably thankful that I don't think they fired her. I think she retired.
Oh, okay.
But I see what you mean about the passion thing. I don't know whether it was ever. Maybe it came across as anger, but I don't know whether I was ever.
I'm just wondering, like anger for the things that you had to, like. Were you ever mad, like, fuck you for making me see this?
Oh no! Oh yeah. Well, I can't say no to that.
That was a 180. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is awful. Most of the people we deal with are not Rhodes Scholars.
Yeah.
And if you made me see that, I've known you for a long time. I used to work for your dad years and years and years ago. And I learned so much from your old man. And I know what kind of life you lived growing up. And if you did that, I'd be mad.
Fair enough, yeah.
It's personal.
Because it's personal. I know you. I know your family. I know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But B, you should know better. Mm-hmm. And I know that you should know better because you were taught better. And people still get jammed up and do stupid stuff. But if people with 19 intelligence points to rub together do something stupid and then something really bad happens, I get angry, but it's not the same kind of anger that I would have.
It's interesting. It's interesting to think about passion and anger in any job, really. Like it's really
and I think it comes to the cops and military gets closer to the edge of that blade, and so the swings are worse.
Yeah, that's fair.
One of the things that jumped out at me is when you talk about that job and then all the times in your career where people have admitted things to you, how that kind of it shows that you're obviously feeling it but not showing it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So under that guise, I just want you to know, 10-2.
10-2.
Yeah.
You got to go to the bathroom?
I gotta go to the bathroom.
Okay.
10-2.
Right now you got to go to the bathroom?
Yeah. And then when I come back, I'm going to ask you really get back at some pertinent questions.
Okay.
What are the permanent questions about to be asked? Are they going to be good, or is this just a cheap gimmick to end the episode? Will Tanner go to the bathroom? Find out on next episode of Radical Apathy.